Hi, Ann Cornick with Paintnporcelain. I'm here to teach beginners how to get started in China painting. We're going to work on daisies today. Now, I like daisies, but when I first learned how to paint daisies back in the late 60s, I started China painting in 68. And at that time, everybody was painting the same daisies. And I didn't care for the daisies they were painting. Here's Sony Ames' study that kind of gives you an idea of what they were doing. They were painting daisies. They were all pink, yellow, blue. You always painted a tricolor daisy. And, this one, I don't know if the colors were true, but they have a blue, a couple of pink, and a white on that one. And I had never seen a blue daisy, so I didn't know why they were painting blue daisies. They had yellow and what have you, but I just didn't like the combination. And at that time, that's what you did. Everybody painted the same thing. So, at least up here they did. So, I didn't paint for a long time, and now I would like to paint daisies because they are a beginner's flower. And if you paint it with a color, with like a yellow daisy, it's definitely a beginner's flower. But we're going to do something that's maybe a one step up, and that is we're going to do a wipeout daisy. So it's going to be white. So here's the first fire that I've already done on another plate. And this is kind of the way they're going to look on the first fire. First thing I learned was I have a study, but I didn't put it on, or a line drawing, but I didn't put it online because I've learned a lot as I've been going. For example, I traced it on. I drew my study. I traced it on. And I traced every little outline of every little petal. Well, when I went to paint it, everything kind of came out real stiff. And not very fluid. The daisies look bad. So I thought, well, I can't do that. Okay. So then I thought, the other thing I noticed was I didn't like the low-hanging flower here. It was a little bit much. I also learned that the main flower really needed to be larger, and so I played with that a little bit. And I also learned that it just was easier when I traced it on to just trace, and here's how I traced it. The centers of the flowers, and then the leaves, and these little sprouty things on the sides here for where I want other flowers or other little dangly stuff, okay? So this is what I ended up with. So you're going to trace it on. You're not going to trace every little petal. You're going to do those freehand, and then you're going to go over it with a Sharpie or a permanent marker of some kind. This is my Sharpie that I use. And I also have a red Pilot pen. They're permanent markers. You could use either of those, but because we're going to be putting paint on and then wiping out, you need something so that the pattern that you want will hold on there. You don't have to use my pattern if you're doing your own pattern. If you're doing white daisies, though, it helps to have whatever you want permanently on there with a Sharpie, so that then as you paint over it, it doesn't erase on you. Okay, so what colors am I using? For those of you that are beginners, you can certainly use your beginner colors, and you may have to modify them a little bit or mix them with something to get them a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. But I'm kind of on the next generation of colors now, and I'd say the three colors on here that you probably can't easily duplicate are the banding blue, because it's kind of a cobalt blue, and cobalt blue, if you have it, you could use. The gray blue, which is right here in the middle, and the shading green, which is on the end here. It's kind of a black green with a little blue, but you have to have at least black green, or you could just use black green, that works. So if you're working with the basic set, you could use Copenhagen instead of cobalt, or banding blue, but it's going to give you a whole different look. Certainly this is close enough to baby blue, the Russian green, so you could use that. The gray green, I don't know, you'd have to play a little and see what you could mix to maybe get a gray green. This is an old gold green, but you could use a brown green and it would look about the same. This is ivory, which you should have, white, yellow brown, yellow red, rich brown, all those colors you should have. And shading, like I said, shading green is kind of a black green with a little bit of blue in it. So that at least gives you an idea of some of the colors we're going to use. Okay, so I'm going to tilt you down and we can get started and you can see how we're going to do this. This is my plate that I'm going to be working on, and you can see I've already traced everything out and I put in the 3 circles that I want to work with. So my first step with this is going to be to take banding blue. I may turn up the light just a tad. There we go. And I'm going to full load with banding blue, and I'm just going to start putting it all over the center here. And the reason I'm doing that is because we're, like I said, we're going to be pulling out the wiping out the petals. So you want it pretty heavy, or dark. I shouldn't say heavy because you don't want to put it on dark. And you do want it to go over the base of the leaves that are going to be behind your daisies. You want to make sure that you cover everywhere that the daisies are going to come out. So this daisy right here, that circle right there, I'm going to make sure I have some blue out in this area to accommodate it. And then I'm just going to do some fancy blending. Blend it, pull it back, pull it out. We're doing the crosshatch, feathering way back on the brush. I'm looking over here. If this daisy comes out, I'm going to have a little blue up in here so that because you won't be able to see it if you don't have something behind it. Okay, that's my first step. I'm also going to go around with a little shading green, side load of shading green, and I'm going to put in a little bit of color at the base of these leaves, because if you don't do it now, you won't get it in later. So I'm just putting in, oh here, I need you over this way a little more. I'm just going to put in a little bit of color here at the base of these leaves. It's key because, like I said, if you don't get the color in at the beginning, when we do the daisy over it, you're just going to mess it up. It doesn't have to be anything super. You just want to get some strokes in. I'm just going from the outside to the middle. Oh, got too much paint on that. From the outside to the middle, and then from the middle to the outside. That's all I'm doing down there, just to put a little color in. This is a leaf here, so I'm going to do the same thing, going from the outside to the middle, and from the middle to the outside. And then back over here. That's why you see how important it is that you use your marker so that you can put your colors on, and they won't erase what's there, and you'll know where you are. This is another leaf here. It's under this one. Right now I'm just doing the base of it. Well, I guess I could put a little dark there because it's going to need it. Okay. And then over here, we're going to do the same thing. We're side loading. This is a number 10 brush that I'm using. It's my favorite because it's a nice smooth one. Oops. And you want to get the green down so it goes behind the flowers too. So you want to make sure that it comes down a little bit. I didn't do that here. I'm going to have to do a little more here. Okay. Clean my brush. Now, haven't used this eraser yet. I have a wedge eraser. They call it a wedge eraser because this end has the wedge on it. I'm using the other end. So what you need to do if you want to try this, I mean, you could use the wedge side, but it leaves these streaks that are hard to control. It's a little easier to control if you have a point like I do on this end. But before I do that, I'm going to take a smaller brush that I have here. I'm going to put an awful lot of mineral spirits on it. Clean it off really well. This is like a number 4. I'm wiping out the centers because I want to be able to see them, and also because I don't want them blues, and I'm doing it now just to save a little time. Okay, so I've got my centers wiped out, so I know where my daisies are going to be. Okay, and now I'm going to use this eraser, and I'm going to start, and I'm going to put in the daisies. Now, let me show you on this one. I think you can see a couple places here. This is probably a good example, this one in front. It's a curve. They flop out. So this is the center, and they flop over a little bit. So you curve them a little bit, just a little bit. They also have, I've noticed as I went through all the studies, they also have a little bit of a ragged edge. Not too ragged, but just not real, it's not perfectly round, at least not on these daisies. They have a little point to them. So I think you can see it on there. So that's what we're going to do on here. We're going to use our eraser. And I will tell you right now, if you don't get the daisies the way you want them on this fire, it's very hard to get them that way later. So I'm going to pull from the center out. And then, well, I guess I'm going to do it this way because it's easier for me. I'm going to start out by doing the typical roundish edge, and then I'm going to pull it out. Now, I know they look terrible right now as you're doing it. But you notice I'm trying to get them so they... Okay, and then over here we're going to... I'm just trying to lay in my daisy the way I want it. Back here, I'm kind of flopping them over. Okay, that's my big daisy. I'm going to take my brush, go in and pull some of that line in the middle down to the base. I'm not going to put all the shading and everything in on this fire. I think it's easier to do that later. Missed one right here. So that's what I have right now. I'm going to refine it, but this is what I have right now. Then I'm going to go back and do the back daisy. These daisies are smaller than your main daisy. And they may disappear behind the main daisy. So if they do, and you don't want to use your eraser there, you can wait and just do it with the brush and make it a little softer. You kind of have to pretend you're a daisy, and it's not always easy because you want to remember which way to flip. Okay, so I got that guy in up there, and I'm going to do this one here. You may find that it's easier to do a two-sided like that, where you do, let me show you. I won't be doing it here. You do the folded, you know, the curve, and then just do a second curve over it. Like this and this, or this. And you have to remember when you get to the top, it's a little bit different. They're a little bit shorter. And then down here again, if they're going to disappear behind this, you might want to wait and just do it with a, not an eraser, but do it with a brush. Okay, now I like This is that rounded tip brush I have. I really like that for doing this. I used a number 4 previously for this one to wipe it out. You could certainly use a number 4 and that would work. Hang on. I have to go in here and correct this. There we go. All right. And we're just going to keep going. I'm wiping out that stuff that's in the middle. So that should work if you're doing daisies. You should be able to just paint over it and get the, and then in here, you can do that for now, and then take your brush and you can just smooth it a little bit, and that'll kind of put them behind. Maybe not quite so much, but there. And don't forget, you're going to have time to put more of a background on these in the future. So that should help. In the future, you'll be able to take the background and put it over that after you fire. Now you're going to go through and pull out the edges of your, in a little here, I want to pull this blue out before it sets up too much. I use a semi-drying medium, and if it sets up too much, it becomes a problem. Okay, so now I've got the basics of my daisies in there. And you can go through and pull out the very edges, make them exactly the way you want them to be. Like I said, sometimes they're a little pointy. These here, oh. You can add a few in there. You can add a few over here if you want. You can clean it up. But you need to clean it up on this fire, because if you don't, this is the white. It's hard to get the white back. The only other way you could do it is to add paint to it. So I want a couple of these a little wider. Okay. All right, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to go in and do the, oh, you might want to put a little one here. You know, it's up to you. I'm going to do the center now. I'm going to use a number 4 brush. I do the center with the yellow-brown. It has kind of a divot in the middle of it. It's like when you put the red dot in the middle of the pansy or the violet or the forget-me-not. It just adds a little something, something. So, and then I'm going to take, let's finish the leaves and then we'll come back to these because there's still more to be done on them. Okay, so this gets you the beginning of your daisy. Now you're going to go and finish your leaves. I'm doing that because my paint, if you use Medium Plus or any of those, they have a little copaiba in them, and they will set up, and it will become difficult for you to move the paint around on the leaves here. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to gently pull some of that. I'm using my gray-green, which, as I said, is a color I don't know that you can get a lot of by mixing it. I think you have to pretty much buy it, but you can try. And I'm leaving a little blue on the leaves. It doesn't hurt. Who cares? I'm side loading with my gray-green, and I'm just going around and playing with the, you see how jagged these are? I'm sort of following the outside of that a little bit just to give it some definition, because when it fires, I'm not going to know where these leaves were unless I put some color close to the edge, because they will inevitably disappear on me. They'll fire out. So I'm just taking the gray-green, and I'm not doing the veins in the center and all that right now. I will do that on the next fire. And I'm just going to add some color on the edge here. So I go down the side, and then I add just a little color, because you already have the green on there, the dark green, and that's what you need. You could take a little shading, add it to the very edge if you want. And I think a couple of these would probably do well with a little of that there. And this one, this side's in the shade over here, so I'm going to add a little shade over here. Oops, need a little more. I'm just using kind of a flat stroke. Let me show you. It's a weird stroke. It's just, I'm just going flat like this. Almost like I'm just pulling the paint across. And we're going to do some down here yet, so we have these finished. And I really like the shape of these leaves, so I'm trying not to destroy the shape of the leaf. And also remember on this fire, because it is your first fire, you need to leave some of the white from the china on there. If you don't, you're going to have a problem because you won't be able to add in any kind of highlight on the next fire. So try to leave some white on this fire so that the next time you've got a nice highlight on those leaves. And I've got one more leaf to do here. Getting things darker is not a problem. You can always add depth on the next fire. Although I am putting a little more dark green in here, there. But you can't add back the highlight. If you don't get the highlight in there now, you won't get it in there later. I'm using my brush dipped in mineral spirits just to remove a little bit where I want to make sure I get a highlight, and also maybe to get a little of that blue out of there. Yeah. This leaf is going to be on top of that one, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay. All right, I've done that. So now I'm going to go back and work on my daisies. The rest of this plate, I'm just going to tint. And I can show you right now. Eventually, I will take and I will put the ivory in the center section, and I will just go around the whole edge. This is Russian blue, green around this edge. And up in here, I have a little bit of this banding blue, but it's very light. And I didn't do the very edge because at the time I was debating, do I leave it or not? I did one this morning. I have several plates of daisies going because I haven't done them in a while. And the one I did this morning, I did the whole edge in a dark, dark banding blue. And I hope it looks like it's going to turn out just beautiful. I'm going to take my liner. I'm going to dip it in my rich brown. And I'm going to create my little divot. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just putting the divot in. And it's, you just use an uneven stroke, go around and do it. If it gets like this one back here is too heavy, take your brush, pull it out. You can play with this and modify it more on a future, but you want to remember to put your divot in. Okay, the next thing I do, and this is a little odd, is I take my liner again, I dip it in the banding blue because that's the background color, and I'm going to start at the base, and I'm going to do this so you can really see, at the base of the petal and pull up. That helps separate and shape the base of the petal. And where I need a little green, I'll pull it in. So like these two, can you see how close they are to each other? These two. I'm just going to put it in there and pull it up, and that gives it just a tad of separation. You can do the same thing here. I don't need to there, but down here I do. Liner, and just pull it up. The liner down here, and we did this on wild roses. And these are a little too separate for me, so I am going to go in and put a few more petals in there. There we go. Can you see how that's working on there? Do a little up in here. You can see they're really tight. See how those little guys up in there are really tight together? I'm just going to take and do that and it instantly separates them. Now, I'm thinking I might want to put a couple of little background. Maybe I won't. As you do that, or make it wider so they're a little closer together. There we go. So now I'm playing with my daisies again for the last time. You need to shape them. You need to make the edges come out. If they're going to cross over another one, let them cross over. Remember, if you don't get the color on the back one, that's fine. You can do that on the next fire. It's not a biggie. I thought I should put a few more in here. It was a little tight. I mean, it was a little loose. And I'm also going to put a little, see, separate that. Separate that. Oops. That one got separated way too much. You can also do this separation thing on the next fire. We're gonna, on the next fire, we will go in. I want this to be a little fatter. On the next fire, we're going to go in and we're going to make sure that we have a little more color at the base of each of these petals, so that in essence they go in towards the center. And so that's something that you'll need to do on the next fire for the most part. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to take and put a little brown on this liner, and I'm just going to go around the center and just sort of add a little texture there. Not a lot. I'm going to put more in on the next fire, but at least this fire I got a little in there. Okay. And then, like I said, the only thing you still have to do then on this is you can take your Russian green and you can start adding it. If you don't like this color, that's fine. You can use a different color. And you can mix the two. I take a little banding blue, a little Russian green, and I mix them. And pull them over. And that will start giving you the color to finish off the outside of this. Make sure you come right up to your leaves. You can use a lighter color now, and if you don't like it, you can always go for a darker color later. And this is what I'm going to do right here. And then I'm just going to pull it out. And I'm only going to go up to this, or I might go all the way over, I don't know. You can do either. It depends on what your plate looks like. Try it a couple of different ways. You may be surprised. You may find that you like it better one way than another. But you need to do this background before the cobalt or the banding blue gets too set up, because otherwise you're going to have a hard time pulling it out into the background. And you're just using that feather stroke. And I'm just going to go all the way around, and you can see how that's going to turn out. And then I will put a little ivory down in here. Alrighty. Okay, so that's the start of our daisies. Now, I hope, if I get my other one done, which I've been working on for a while, that I will have a study, a line drawing that I can put online for you, so that if you want to paint along with me, you can. And again, this is how it turned out. And then this is, of course, the first fire here is completely done. But this is after it's been fired. So you see the difference in the amount of paint that disappears? Oops, there we go. Let me pull them in together. And when you lose those lines, you lose a lot. So you'll be surprised at how it changes when it gets fired. I think that this is an easy way for beginners to try to do the the daisies. And remember, we're going to do more with the daisies on the next fire, but the key on this fire is make sure you get the flowers exactly the way you want them. Make sure that those petals are as wide as you want them here. You know, you have to have the wide petal if you want a wide petal. If you want to add extra flowers in the background. If you have a lot of blue up in here, oops, I'm sorry, I'm not in camera. If you have a lot of blue up in here, you need to get it out of there if you don't want it there, because it's not going to go away in the next fire. Your edges are not going to be smooth in the next fire unless you smooth them now. So these are things you really need to pay attention to on this fire, because later on you're going to be out of luck. Alrighty. Well, thank you for joining me. I kind of like the cobalt blue or the banding blue. It's a little bit different for those daisies. So we will put the second coat on next time. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye. Hi, I hope you enjoyed the program, and I hope that you will watch future programs by liking and subscribing to my page. If you do subscribe, I would really appreciate it so that other people who have a similar interest will be able to see more of this kind of programming. I have studies available at my website along with products. If you're interested in finding out more about those, please look at the description box below. Thank you.